Before I get into this video, I just want to say, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Meanwhile, the series final of Futurama, then I suggest you do so before watching this. Now for those that have seen it, let's see if getting out of the infinite loop is really a possibility. There's also another thing in the show which is kind of an infinite loop, but isn't really, but is, but isn't, that I'll be talking about first. Warning, this could get confusing as all hell in parts. Put on those thinking hats, kiddos, because today, we're talking about time travel. Luckily I'm not exactly a genius, so it should be okay to follow, and my theories will likely be easily disprovable anyway. If you haven't seen the following episodes multiple times, then it's probably best you do so to understand what I'm talking about, unless you just want to hear me sound like I'm on cocaine. These are the time-based episodes from the show, though Time Keeps on Slipping won't really be mentioned other than right now. Those episodes are Time Keeps on Slipping, Bender's Big Score even though it's a movie, The Late Philip J. Fry, and Meanwhile. Basically the 4 episodes that involve time travel in some shape or form. One's a movie, but I digress. Before I even talk about the more obvious infinite loop, this is something I want to talk about first. One thing I think people will say is that the universe is on an infinite loop anyway, because in The Late Philip J. Fry, the universe ends and then another Big Bang happens. This is true in the sense that everything happens again, but I don't look at this as a loop. This is how I view that episode. Time itself in The Late Philip J. Fry didn't restart. The best way that I can explain that is that time itself didn't restart, but the actions of the universe simply happened again. It's like a dial on a car telling you the distance you've travelled. Just because it will reset after a certain number doesn't mean that you didn't reach that limit on the dial previously. For all we know, the universe had reset billions of times before the Fry that we follow. The stuff I have to support my argument here is that Fry, Bender and Farnsworth kill themselves when they get back to their time. That can't be a true 100% reset because there wouldn't be a Fry, Bender and Farnsworth to go in the time machine to travel to what seems like back in time to kill themselves. Those are a different Fry, Bender and Farnsworth about to get in the time machine, but they have almost definitely experienced everything their other selves have up to that point. Before I move on to another theory, I want to fix some stuff that may seem like holes in my argument there. You could argue that since the professor accidentally causes them to skip killing their other selves the first time around since he goes too far forwards in time, that it disproves my theory. Well, to those people I say you are the wrong one. I'm really struggling to understand this. Since the professor skips past their time once, that just means that the group that our characters didn't kill skip over their first opportunity to get back to their time too, but kill the second set of characters they come across. And thus it keeps happening over and over again. So even though the universe is essentially repeating itself, time is still going forwards. So really, this isn't a theory on how they can get out of the situation. This is just me arguing against the Late Philip J. Fry thing being an infinite loop, even though it kind of is. I do think they are stuck with all this happening over and over again, but because time in my eyes is still moving forward, I can't call it an infinite loop. Plus, I don't think the time button from Meanwhile would work if this episode was a true infinite loop, because that means all the future places they go to would be stopped in time, but time isn't stopped in that episode. There might be some nuts way out of this, and if any writers can do it, it's the Futurama writers, but I don't have anything. Whew. Oh geez, this is getting weird. Let's get into the Meanwhile stuff now, and this stuff isn't nearly as confusing for me to explain. Meanwhile features the time button, a button that essentially is only used for going back in time to the point before you hit the time button. Kind of like the game, strangely enough. When Fry destroys the time button, time seems to stop, but not affecting Fry, Leela and the Professor. At the very end of the episode, the Professor reveals he's been searching for all time to find the time button. He reveals that if they so choose, they can go back and reset the universe. But it means that everything they've done in the past will happen again with them not having any memories of it. The only info we get as to which point in time it'll take them back to is that it'll be whenever the Professor first made the time button. Still following? Okay, good. Now I can see this ending working in a few different ways. Since we get little of the Professor after time stops, we don't get full explanations as to how everything works. So I'm only able to piece some things together at this point. On one side, it's possible that all time before this point could be working properly, and it's only after Fry destroyed the time button that has the wrecked time. The second possibility is that all time has stopped, even before Fry destroyed the time button, and that the time button really did wreck all time. I know there are going to be some people out there that say, well, maybe the characters will just make a different decision. I'm going to be frank, I find that ridiculous. Not only would that be such an anticlimactic solution to this problem, but it also goes against almost everything time travel stands for. The characters will have to keep their thoughts unless we can stick some kind of thorn of some kind in there that can get them out. I know this may be getting annoying or be annoying already, but once again I'm going to give info on an episode so a theory of mine can make sense. Professor says at the end of Meanwhile that they'll go back to the point before he invented the time button. Following Futurama continuity, which is definitely a little iffy, that point would be after Bender's big score, as in that, and time keeps on slipping, the Professor is shown to be in complete denial about time travel being a realistic possibility. Now I think it's possible that while he was somewhat in denial, somewhere in between Time Keeps on Slipping and Bender's Big Score, he may have experimented with time travel. I also think it's possible he was just being senile at certain points and he had the time button the whole time. My point is that the writers have quite a bit of space to play around with as to when he came up with the button. Anyway, the reason I needed to explain that is because my theory is on the Farnsworth paradox. To my knowledge, nowhere in Meanwhile is it said that time stops for every alternate universe. Then again, that episode isn't exactly continuity heaven, as earlier in the show's life, we get told there is only one alternate dimension.
So there's an infinite number of parallel universes? No, just the two.
So I think it is possible that eventually someone from a different dimension could show up and change some events for when Fry, Leela and Farnsworth go back. I do find this theory fairly unlikely though, because I think it would have happened at some point when Fry and Leela got old together. Possibility 2. The universe fixes its own time anomalies. In Bender's Big Score, it confirms that what the Professor says in Time Keeps on Slipping is true. The universe does have some time-correcting properties. In Bender's Big Score, all of the second versions of the characters that time travelled get corrected. In other words, yeah, killed. So even though I don't know exactly what the universe would do, I'm sure that eventually it would learn how to correct the problem. Maybe when they go back it wouldn't allow the invention to work, or it would change the Professor's mindset slightly so he doesn't invent it. Possibility 3. They remember stuff after they go back in time because they did every other time they used the time button. In Meanwhile, we see that every time the characters use the button, they keep their memories from before using the button. So I think that the Professor may simply be wrong about them losing their memories. And when they go back in time, they will remember what happened and simply won't do it again, thus breaking that infinite loop. I think it's more likely the Professor would be the only one to remember. It makes more sense from a story structure so that the smart guy is the one to fix everything, which is what's happened in Rebirth. Possibility 4. The time button disables itself. I think this is my most reaching for it theory. I think it's possible that the Professor, in anticipation for Fry breaking the device, incorporated a feature that would disable the time button across all timelines once they next used it. I think the Professor wouldn't have told Fry and Leela this, thinking they wouldn't agree to go back if it could affect their ending up together. So essentially, that's just my the Professor is a lying arsehole theory. Those are all my theories, and also some other things. Some of the writers have probably already come up with much more clever solutions to this problem than I ever could. It's important to remember though that this is a TV show, so they could easily go against continuity or come up with something completely absurd. Do any of you have any ideas as to how Futurama can get itself out of this infinite loop predicament? Be sure to let me know in the comments. Until next time, bye I guess.